Listen, adoption is not all sunshine and roses. I love to focus on the positive side of adoption as much as anyone else. However, I think I would be remiss if I did not let you know that adoption is extremely difficult. I love to focus on the positive sides of adoption because I truly believe that adoption can be something really beautiful. However, we need to remember that adoption begins out of brokenness, and that means it's not going to be easy on you or your adopted child. And sure, you can watch as many sappy adoption videos as you want and convince yourself that you'll always be happy if you make this decision and you'll just love your life so much. But the reality is that once you're an adoptive parent, you will know the truth. It is so hard sometimes. It's 100% worth it, but it is so difficult. So today, let's confront 3 of the most common unrealistic expectations adoptive parents have before beginning this process. Do any of you have these same unrealistic expectations? Stick around to find out. Hey, if you're new here and this is the first time clicking on one of my videos, my name is Katie, and my husband Nick and I adopted our 3 children from foster care as waiting children. And now it is my goal to help as many others do that as possible. So not only do I share all of this great information on YouTube, but I'm also an adoption consultant, and I work individually with families all across the country to help them get started on their adoption journey. So if you have a million questions, you're not sure if adoption would be right for you, or maybe you want to talk through some of your unrealistic expectations, I have a link in my description as well as in a pinned comment where you can schedule a consultation with me and we can talk about all the things. So now for the most common unrealistic expectations that I find with prospective adoptive parents. Number 1, if I adopt a younger child, I can pretty much expect that they won't have as many issues. Well, first of all, if you think this, you clearly have not watched my video about adopting older kids versus adopting toddlers, or my video about toddler adoption in general. My husband and I adopted our youngest daughter when she was 1.5, and we had a lot of people make comments like this to us, that we were so lucky because she was so young, she wasn't going to have as many difficulties. And let me tell you, that was not the case. There's a few reasons for this. One is that adoption and loss and trauma affects everyone. It doesn't matter what age they are when it happens. Even if they do not consciously remember what happened, their body remembers, and that trauma is in their bodies. And it can be difficult to overcome that as they get older. Not impossible, but difficult. And the issue is that when you adopt a really young child, they have absolutely no concept of what adoption is at all. All they know is that you are the wrong person. You are not the person who's supposed to be taking care of them. Where'd my other person go? And they can become scared, angry, even violent, to the extent that a very young child can become violent. They will likely grieve and feel confused, and that grief and confusion can come out as anger towards the caregiver. And this can be so challenging because how do you communicate with a child who doesn't have the words to understand what is happening? And adoption is a kind of complex emotional thing. There are even some adults who don't get the concept of adoption. So trying to explain that to a 1.5-year-old or a 2-year-old or even a 3-year-old is extremely difficult. Another reason why I think this is a really unrealistic expectation is that in my research and my reading, I have discovered that many of the older adoptees, adult adoptees, who struggle the most with being adopted and struggle the most with their emotions surrounding that often were adopted as infants or as toddlers. Now, I do not have like a statistic to back this up. I'm just telling you that I have read a lot from adult adoptees, and many of the ones who seem the most frustrated with the concept of adoption or that struggle the most with their adoptive parents or accepting them as their parents, they were adopted really young. And I think it makes total sense because when they were adopted as a child, they had no clue what was going on. There was anger and confusion, and they never really got to have a connection with their birth families. And this is bad in a couple of ways. So number 1, if they don't have a connection with their birth families, they will often feel like their birth parents didn't love them, and that the reason they were adopted was because they were unloved or unwanted or something like that. And I think it's a little different for older kids who are adopted who can maybe understand more either why their parents couldn't take care of them in the way they were supposed to or things like that. You can talk through that stuff with them. With a little kid, you just can't. And, as your child gets older, you can explain those things, but they didn't get to experience that in a way they can remember. And so it's harder for them to accept that. This could be a little controversial, but I also think that a big reason why those adoptees tend to struggle with it as they get older is because they don't really know what the alternative would have been. If they hadn't been raised with their adoptive families, assuming their adoptive family was healthy, not abusive, and all of those things, they don't really know what it would have been like in reality to live with their birth families. And for many of them, it would not have been good. It would have been a very difficult life with very little support, with neglect, with all sorts of difficult situations. This is especially for kids who were adopted from foster care, who were removed from their home because it was unsafe. Whereas, I feel like with my older kids, even though they still grieve not being with their birth family at times, there's this understanding of what their life could have been versus what it is now because they lived it and they remember it. They remember the situations that they went through living with their bio families in ways that young kids, they don't know. They don't know what they don't know. And it makes total sense. Unrealistic expectation number 2. I will have an instant bond with my adopted child and I will have no problems with attachment. I just want to let you know that on my notes here, my first note says, ha ha ha. I'm not gonna lie. I think that part of me believed this as well because I had wanted to adopt for so long. Adoption for us was not plan B or a backup situation. It was our plan A, which a lot of people do not get, but it was what we wanted to do. We both felt called to do it. We were excited to do it. We wanted to make a difference. We wanted to walk down this path. And I've worked with kids, I'm a teacher, and I was just like, I'm just good with kids and I'm just gonna love it. I'm gonna be awesome. And oh, let me tell you, I learned the hard way. Now, I truly believe that you will have an instant love for your children. And I made a video before about love versus attachment because I think there is a big difference between the two. In my mind, love is caring for them, putting their needs before yours, wanting the best for them, hoping and dreaming for their futures. All of those types of things are love. And love is also choosing to do things for them to help them. You might make them meals that are healthy for them. You might put them in activities that they really want to try. You might help them with your homework when you'd rather lay on the couch. All of those things are showing love. But that's different than attachment. And I think a lot of times we expect ourselves as adoptive parents that we're going to have instant feelings of love and feelings of affection and feelings of attachment right from the get-go. And I just think this is really unrealistic. And remember, there's a honeymoon period at the start. At the very beginning, you might feel like that. You might feel like, oh my gosh, I love spending time with my kid. This is perfect. My life is exactly as I imagined. But I want you to remember that kids are on their very best behavior those first few weeks. Sometimes it only lasts a few days. Sometimes it can last a month. It just depends on the kid. But there may be a stretch where you're like, this is everything I dreamed it would be. It's perfect. And then it's all going to come crashing down because the child is going to start testing you. They're going to start, just being a kid. And kids are not perfect. It'd be weird if your kids were perfect all the time. That is not normal kid behavior. And as some of those behaviors come out, that may be a struggle. It may be a lot harder for you to feel that affection and feel this attachment towards them. And I can pretty much guarantee that if you're adopting your child, they're going to have some sort of attachment issues at the beginning. I mean, a lot of adults have attachment issues that we need to work through. So of course, a kid who's been through all these really difficult situations, going home to home, or even just, losing their first family and being adopted, yeah, I would have attachment issues too from that. Also, it's just not normal to bond instantly with someone just because someone just told you, hey, this is your new mom, and you're like, Mom, okay? That is not actually a good sign. That is not normal. That is not good attachment. So you need to give your kids time for that attachment, and you also need to understand that you are most likely going to need time to build that attachment as well. And that does not make you a bad parent. Because at the beginning, your kid is probably going to be one of three ways. They're either going to be extremely clingy, which is anxious attachment, or very distant, which is avoidant attachment, or a combination of the two that you can never predict, which is disorganized. And over time, we hope to get them to that secure attachment, but we also have to eventually get to that secure attachment with them as well. So go easy on yourself, go easy on your kid, and do not expect that you're just going to instantly feel attachment to your child. And last but not least, number 3, this unrealistic expectation is that my love will fix all of the problems my child has experienced in their lives. Don't get me wrong, love is powerful. I do believe that love can change things and love can heal things, but it's not going to heal everything and it's not going to happen quickly. It is an unrealistic expectation to believe that just because you love your kids strongly, that they're going to suddenly be okay and everything they've been through is just going to be a distant memory. Honestly, this affects both you and your child. You're putting an unrealistic expectation on them in their own healing, but you're also putting an unrealistic expectation on yourself. Because if you think that if your love is good enough that it will heal everything, then guess what? When your child is not suddenly healed and suddenly trauma-free, that in your mind is going to reflect on your parenting or who you are, that your love must not be good enough. And then you can start to question things and it just is a rabbit hole from there. Do these kids need our love? Yes, your kids need you to love them and to put them first and to do things for them and to show them affection. But they also might need therapy. They might need medication. They might need some other services that can help them. And really, they need time. And some of these scars from their past may never fully disappear, but that doesn't mean we won't see growth. And I think focusing on those little aspects of growth in your child's story are so important. It is very helpful to just reflect and to look back at a few months ago and compare maybe your child's reactions to things now versus 3 months ago. Because oftentimes you can look back and see little bits of growth that you don't notice on a day-to-day basis because you're with them all the time. But when you think back like, oh my gosh, 2 months ago, they would have freaked out about this type of situation and now they're handling it great. And the other great thing about focusing on that growth instead of thinking your love's gonna fix everything is that it gives you a way to encourage your child and to build them up and say, I can totally see how you've grown and I'm really proud of you. So no, your love will not fix everything your child has been through. It will not instantly heal them of their trauma, but your love is important and your words of encouragement and support are important. So those are the most common unrealistic expectations that I think a lot of prospective adoptive parents have. And I can say that confidently because I had some of these unrealistic expectations before we adopted. I would love to know in the comments if you have had any of these unrealistic expectations. You can just put a 1, 2, or a 3, or a 1 and a 2, whichever ones you think apply to you. I would love to hear that. It could give me ideas for helping you guys with some more videos. And as always, if you could like this video and subscribe to the channel so we can hang out more, that would be super helpful. Thank you for watching. You are the best, and I will see you next week.